He stood there, silent for a moment, his hands folded calmly in front of him, as the room buzzed with tension. The cameras rolled. The air was thick with anticipation. Then, in a voice steady and clear, John Kennedy said just 10 words that would echo across the nation for days. Let me tell you what freeloading really looks like. But to understand why that moment hit so hard, we need to go back just a few hours earlier, to the beginning of what would become one of the most viral and emotionally charged political exchanges in recent memory. It started during a nationally televised town hall. The event was meant to be a platform for open discussion on social welfare, economic responsibility, and government spending. People from all walks of life had gathered: small business owners, veterans, single mothers, students, retirees. Among them was Jasmine, a passionate and well-spoken young community organizer who had spent years fighting for the underprivileged. Known for her no-nonsense approach and bold statements, Jasmine had a reputation for shaking things up. She believed many politicians were out of touch, living off the system they claimed to regulate. When it was her turn at the microphone, Jasmine didn't waste time. "Senator Kennedy," she began, her voice strong and unwavering. "You talk about personal responsibility and fiscal discipline, but to many of us, you represent the exact opposite. You've drawn a paycheck from the government for years, while people like my mother worked 3 jobs just to put food on our table. With all due respect, sir, you're the freeloader here." The room fell silent. The moderator froze. Even the cameramen stopped moving. Kennedy blinked slowly. He wasn't a stranger to confrontation, but this wasn't just a policy disagreement. This was personal, accusatory, the type of statement that could ruin a reputation in an instant or rebuild it with the right response. He looked at Jasmine, not with anger, but with something that surprised everyone: empathy. Then he stepped forward. "I appreciate your courage," he said, "and your pain is valid." People in the room shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't the fiery rebuttal they'd expected. "But before we decide who's freeloading," he continued, "let me tell you a story." What followed was a 5-minute monologue that felt more like a confessional than a defense. Kennedy didn't rattle off stats. He didn't name-drop economists or political allies. Instead, he told a story. "I grew up in a small Louisiana town. My father wasn't a senator. He wasn't rich. He was a welder. My mother worked nights at a hospital kitchen. We didn't have much, but we had grit and dignity. I got a scholarship to college because I worked hard and studied harder. I held down jobs to pay for the rest. Landscaping in the summers, bartending at night. I didn't come from money, and I never forgot where I came from. I got into public service not because it was easy, but because I wanted to fight for people who never had a voice. I've made mistakes, sure, but freeloading." His voice dropped, his tone sharpened. "Freeloading is turning your back on the people who trusted you. Freeloading is doing nothing when you could fight. And every vote I've cast, every bill I've written, every hour I've spent in those halls, that's been my way of earning this paycheck, not for me. For the people who can't afford to lose another job, another home, another dream." He paused. The room was so still, you could hear someone's water bottle hit the floor in the back row. "I'm not perfect, but I'm not a freeloader. I've paid for this life in service, sweat, and sacrifice. Just like your mother did." Jasmine's eyes, which had been filled with fire just minutes ago, now shimmered with something else: recognition. Maybe even respect. She nodded once, quietly, and sat back down. The moderator, visibly moved, struggled to find words. Applause broke out, not a standing ovation, not wild cheering, just a slow, honest, heartfelt applause from people who realized they'd just witnessed something rare: humility, clarity, and truth in politics. The clip went viral that same night. Millions watched as Kennedy's measured response reframed a national conversation. Not because he won the exchange, but because he reminded everyone that behind the suits and soundbites were real people, flawed, determined, trying to do the right thing. And Jasmine, she later said in an interview, "I don't regret calling him out, but I'm glad he answered like a human being." because we need more of that on both sides. In the end, this wasn't a story about who was right or wrong. It was a story about listening, being brave enough to speak up, and even braver to listen with an open heart. About how a 5-minute story can change a conversation, and maybe even a country. Message: true leadership isn't about being right. It's about being real. And when empathy walks into the room, ego walks out.